My name is Maria. They say old age is when your kids take care of you. You sit on the porch telling stories and soak up the quiet. Ha! My quiet ended the moment my daughter-in-law leaned in and whispered, "Say hi to the waves, old lady," then shoved me straight into the ocean like a sack of trash. And my son? He just stood there smiling like he was watching a cheap magic trick. That's the return on decades of raising him, feeding him, schooling him, giving him everything. What I got back was a push toward the ocean floor. If you think this is a tragedy, you're wrong. It was the warm-up. I didn't die. I came back, not to sob, but to teach my beloved family that the person they tried to bury is the one who'll rewrite the ending. Hit subscribe, turn on notifications, share this story, and don't forget to drop a comment about where you're listening from. Because I'm betting you want to know, how does a betrayed widow get even when she's got nothing left to lose? And it all started, sounds sweet, doesn't it? With a phone call. "Mom, come join us on a cruise." They say children are your savings for old age. Sure, savings to shove you into the ocean, more like it. I'm Maria, 70, a widow who once believed blood ties could be trusted. I was wrong, and that mistake almost sent me to the bottom. That morning the phone rang. My son Andrew. His voice was sweet as sugar melting in tea. "Mom, we want to take you out on the water, a little trip, to celebrate you getting your strength back after surgery." I nearly cried. 6 weeks on crutches in a quiet apartment had me starving for attention, even a phone call. So I believed, or rather I wanted to believe, the invite came from love, not calculation. I picked a navy dress, the one my late husband used to say, made my eyes brighter. When the taxi dropped me at the marina, my son opened his arms. His hug was stiff, like someone being forced to embrace a statue they can't stand. Behind him, his wife, Vanessa, smiled, sharp as a shard of glass. The boat gleamed white in the sun. 40 feet of luxury, Mom, Andrew bragged. We're thinking of taking her to the Caribbean next month. I pressed my lips together. I knew the consulting firm investment I'd fronted last year had turned into this floating toy. I kept quiet. What mother wants to shame her son in front of his wife? We cast off. For the first hour, the wind teased my hair, and for a moment I let myself believe this really was a family outing. Vanessa poured mimosas. Andrew told harmless little stories. It didn't take long for the mask to slip. "Have you thought about updating your will?" Andrew asked, voice soft as a velvet-wrapped blade. I froze, hiding it. He went on. "Just to keep things simple. You know how messy legal stuff gets." I set down my glass and met his eyes. They weren't the eyes of the little boy who once held my hand learning to ride a bike. They were cold, metallic, knife-bright. Across from me, Vanessa pretended to take selfies. In the screen's reflection, I saw it. She was quietly recording me drinking and talking. The picture snapped into focus. The papers they'd pushed under my pen while I was still in the hospital. The calls to my advisor that never got returned. And now, out here on open water, my son building a file for the storyline. The old lady's slipping. "I want to head back now," I said, steady. His face changed. His voice chilled. "Mom, we need to talk. About your health, your memory. Do you remember mixing up your pills? Getting lost that time?" Vanessa chimed in, sugary with poison. "We have the medical notes. The doctor's seen it. You're no longer capable of managing your assets." I snorted. "My capacity is better than the two of you combined." Inside, I knew the trap was set. Andrew opened his briefcase and slid out a stack of papers. "Sign, Mom." Transfer everything so we can protect you. It'll make things easier. I looked at the pages, then at my son. I thought of the years I'd spent raising him. The feverish night I sat by his bed, his wedding day when I put his father's ring in his palm as a keepsake. And this was what he put in mine. Go to hell, I said. That's when Vanessa stood, leaned close and whispered, say hi to the waves, old lady. One shove, not hard, just enough to take my balance. I went over. The water knifed the air from my lungs. The heavy dress dragged me down. I heard Andrew yelling, "Mom! Oh my God, Mom!" Acting so bad it was almost funny. And Vanessa's cool voice into the phone, metallic and flat. File the emergency petition in the morning. She's clearly incompetent. The surface sealed over my head. The boat's white belly slid away. They left me, tossed like a broken appliance. But life wasn't finished with me. I kicked, tore off my shoes, and fought my way up. Wind screamed, my heart hammered, my chest burned. I watched that yacht shrink in the distance, and under the ache something else lit inside me. Fire. If this was how they wanted my story to end, I would rewrite it my way. The sea didn't swallow me. It spat me back out, so I could teach the traitors that a widow isn't so easy to bury. And that was only the beginning. The salt water flooded my mouth, so bitter it burned all the way down my throat. I thrashed in the blue-green dark, legs leaden under the weight of my soaked dress. Every heartbeat pounded like a drum in my chest, part command to fight, part funeral toll. I thought maybe this really was the end. A 70-year-old woman, shoved into the ocean by her own son and daughter-in-law, would never get a proper obituary. Just a cold body and a tiny item in the paper. Boating accident. Elderly woman with memory issues fell overboard. That would be that. I spit out a mouthful of seawater and forced myself toward the surface. The sky was slate gray, wind screaming past my ears, and far off the white boat kept skimming along as if I'd never been on it. The people I'd raised were already turning their backs, leaving me for the waves. Just when my lungs felt ready to explode, a dark shape cut across the water. An engine coughed, and someone shouted, "Holy hell, there's a person in the water." Two rough hands grabbed me, hauled me up. My back hit wet planks. Fish and brine and diesel closed over me like a blanket. I curled in on myself, shaking so hard my teeth clattered, unable to string a full sentence together. The man who pulled me out was Jack, an old fisherman with a face carved deep by the wind. Beside him stood his grandson, maybe 17, eyes blown wide. Jack draped a beat-up wool blanket over my shoulders, salt ground into every thread. His voice was gravel. "Ma'am, what happened? Who leaves you in the middle of the ocean like this?" My mouth opened, but all I managed was a rasp. Please, don't call the police. I'm not dead yet. I haven't given permission." The boy looked at his granddad, unsure. Jack just nodded, a strange, quiet understanding lighting his weathered eyes. He didn't press. He only squeezed my arm, steadying, saying he'd seen worse. The little boat shouldered the chop, engine buzzing against the wind. I tucked under the blanket, trembling, but clearing by the minute. Every gust across my cheek brought back the shove from my daughter-in-law, my son's ice-cold stare. Pain leaked through every vein, but inside it, a spark flared. I was still alive. Jack shoved a dented thermos cup into my hands, coffee thick and hot. I sipped, teeth still chattering, the bitterness hauling me back to the present. He spoke low, eyes on me, and the horizon both. A woman like you doesn't fall in by accident. You're running from something, aren't you? I didn't answer. I stared at the salt-soaked boards and let the tears fall, mixing with the stink of fish and fuel. The boy laid another blanket over my shoulders, voice young and earnest. We saw the yacht keep going, didn't even look back. Are those your people? I laughed, short and raw. My people? Sure. If the ones who want to watch me drown count as family, then yes. I wiped my face and kept my voice even. No, my real family died with my husband 2 years ago. We tied up at a quiet slip, well away from town. Jack and the boy helped me ashore and into a weathered shack by the water. A small stove glowed red, and for the first time in hours, warmth seeped through my skin. I looked at them, voice shaky but clear. You saved my life, but please don't tell anyone I'm alive. Let them think I'm gone. Jack frowned, then dipped his head. He was an old hand, and his eyes said what the ocean had taught him. Some secrets belong under the waves. That night I lay on a narrow bed with a threadbare sheet, salt still tangled in my hair. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw my son's face, my daughter-in-law's dead hand. The hurt rose up and braided into it a hard new resolve. If they want a funeral, I'll give them one, just not mine. Tomorrow the whole town will dress in black for a poor, unfortunate old woman. They'll weep, they'll console the killers, and me? I'll sit in the dark, watch their little play, and wait for the curtain to fall. My funeral took place on a slate-gray morning. The sky was sealed in cloud. No sunlight broke through. Fitting, I thought, and almost laughed. 70 years on this earth, and it ends with me standing behind a fence in a borrowed coat, shivering in the wind, watching people weep over an empty shell. I chose a spot tucked behind the cemetery's maintenance shed. From there I could see everything. The gleaming casket, wreaths stacked in layers, and an oversized photo of me on an easel. In it, I'm holding a glass of wine, looking a little lost. I remember that moment, a surprise party I hadn't been warned about. I wasn't confused, just startled to walk into a room full of strangers. But to anyone else, that picture says something different. A dazed old woman slipping away. Exactly the storyline they scripted. Andrew, my son, stood beside the casket. Black suit, neat tie, head bowed with the kind of perfect sorrow you have to rehearse. Vanessa matched him, mascara smudged, white handkerchief fluttering at the corner of her eye. I'd bet money she practiced in the mirror. More people came than I expected. Old neighbors, women from my book club, even the friend who used to knit with me. They truly believed I was gone. They hugged Andrew, squeezed Vanessa's hands, whispered condolences. Real tears fell, and it stabbed at me. I wasn't dead. I was right there, a few dozen paces away. But truth didn't matter. What they could see mattered more. An elderly mother with memory issues, fallen from a boat and swallowed by the sea. I bit down hard enough to taste blood. Wonderful. I lived 70 years to watch a town mourn a fake Alzheimer's patient they invented. I started scanning the crowd. At a funeral like this, there should have been the people who worked closely with me. My attorney, financial advisor, head accountant. But no, they were absent. No flowers, no card, no nod of respect. Just a deliberate, chilling gap that raised the hairs on my neck. Of course, if this were a simple accident, they would be here. But this wasn't an accident. It was a production, and a few cast members had chosen to stay off stage. Clear sign. My son didn't build this set by himself. Someone bankrolled it. Someone sold their signature, their paperwork, and their conscience. The priest's voice droned on, like a passage he'd memorized. I couldn't take in a word. I just watched Andrew. His eyes lifted slightly, skimming the casket. He squeezed Vanessa's hand. They bowed their heads together, just moving enough to move the crowd, just enough to hide the truth. Inside, they were radiant. My fist closed inside my pocket, nails digging until the skin broke. I didn't feel pain, only a deeper cold than the wind, the cold of betrayal. The service ended. People filed past the casket, laying a hand on it, murmuring goodbyes. Andrew and Vanessa stood there, accepting every hug, every pitying word, playing the leads in a family tragedy. If I weren't the victim, I might have believed it too. But I'm Maria. I know better than anyone. When the line thinned, I backed away, pulled my hood up to shadow my face, and left the cemetery with my heart hammering. Ahead of me was more than hurt. It was a blaze of resolve. If someone helped them build this stage, I'll drag every last one of them into the grave, props included. I watched their perfect little play, but every play has a flaw, and I just found the first thread. Tonight, I'm going back to the old house, and that's where the secret they never expected me to see will come to light. I went back to my old house in the dark. The street looked the same, the old elms whispering in the wind, but it felt like they were warning me, "Don't go back, Maria. This isn't home anymore." I'd lived in that house 35 years. Every brick had my sweat and my husband's in it. I raised a child there, hosted Christmases there, lit birthday candles there. But tonight, I didn't enter as the owner. I went in like a thief. The old key was still in my coat pocket. My son had never bothered to change the locks. Why would he? In his mind, I was already sleeping on the ocean floor. I slid the key in, turned it, and the door gave. A strange smell rushed out, no longer polished wood and candle wax, but damp rot mixed with something metallic, like fresh toner and wet ink. I felt my way through the living room. The old sofas were shrouded in white sheets, but here and there gleamed new expensive toys. A massive speaker system, a flat screen, flashy and cold, just like the man now living here. I stopped at my husband's study. He used to sit at that desk for hours, reading the paper, tapping at his typewriter, and I would bring in tea. That room had been the heart of the house. Now it was a stomach full of teeth. The desk was buried in paperwork. I turned over a stack and felt my blood go ice cold. Bold letters across the cover page. The Mariah Project. I read, heart pounding. Every line was a knife. Phase 1, hospitalized subject obtain temporary power of attorney. Phase 2, escalate evidence of cognitive decline. Phase 3, boating incident. Dates beside each phase. Notes. Even photos of me looking startled or lost, spliced and arranged into a fake indictment to sell me as a senile old woman. I braced my hands on the desk to keep from buckling. They'd planned it for a year. Every time I mixed up a key, every time I forgot a neighbor's name, they logged it and twisted it into proof. In my head, I heard Vanessa's giggle, her whisper at my ear. "Say hi to the waves." I bit my lip until I tasted blood. If they wanted to kill me with a script, I'd answer with a bigger production. I gathered a handful of documents and stuffed them into my coat. Then a sound sliced through the dark, a baby crying. I froze. No baby had ever lived in this house except Andrew when he was small. Andrew hates crying, hates diapers. He once told me flat out, "I don't want kids, Mom. Kids ruin everything." So, what was that? I held my breath and followed the sound, thin but clear. It carried from an upstairs bedroom. I climbed one step at a time, my heart pounding like a drum. A door stood almost closed, a strip of warm light spilling out, the crying louder. I nudged it open. My old bedroom had been turned into a nursery. White crib, musical mobiles, a tiny red-faced thing, swaddled tight, kicked and wailed. I stood there, a trembling old woman staring at a stranger's child in my own house. My son never wanted children, so where did this baby come from? And when I bent over and looked into that child's eyes, I understood. This story was no longer just about money. It was about blood, about life, and about a crime I had never imagined. I stood there, stone still beside the crib. The baby's cries ripped through the silence, echoing around the room that used to be Andrew's when he was small. How fitting, and how obscene. The place where my son once slept safely now held a secret that curdled the blood. I looked down at that red, scrunched face and those tiny, thrashing hands, and I understood. This story had left money far behind. The next day, I started digging for answers. In the papers I'd stuffed into my coat, I found a birth certificate. Clear as day, parents listed as Andrew and Vanessa. But the date of birth? 3 weeks ago. I went cold. 4 days earlier on that yacht, Vanessa was in a tight dress with a perfectly flat stomach, no sign she'd just delivered a child. I knew at once. The document was fake. I took my suspicion to the only person I trusted now, Jack, the fisherman. He read the paper, his sea-worn eyes narrowing. "This is dirty work," he said. "People don't have babies in 10 minutes, Maria." He put me in touch with a young nurse he knew, named Clara. She'd been hired to care for the infant in my house. We met at a little cafe by the water, the smell of pastries beating back the salt air. Clara arrived with sleep-bruised eyes, still in scrubs printed with cartoons. She sat, hands shaking around her cup. I met her gaze and didn't bother with gentleness. "Clara, I'm Maria. I'm the woman they said was dead." She nearly dropped her coffee. "That can't be. I saw the news. The funeral. I carried the baby past the crowd. The news was a lie. The funeral was theater. And that child. He isn't Andrew and Vanessa's. You know that, don't you?" Clara's eyes shone, wavering. At last, she nodded. "I've cared for him since day one. Vanessa told me to call him our son, but no incision, no postpartum signs. I'm a nurse. I know. They showed me a birth certificate, and I kept my mouth shut." I slid her the certificate I'd found. She glanced at it, her lips trembling. "It's bogus. I overheard a call. Some fertility center. They paid to arrange everything. A girl, 17. She died in labor, and after that, no one said her name again. It felt like a bucket of ice dumped over my bones. A child born from a death turned into a prop so 2 traders could use him as a charm to strip an old woman's estate. I drew a long breath and took Clara's hand. "Will you help me? We need proof. Your statement that the baby isn't theirs." Clara looked at me, unsteady, then suddenly steady. "I'll help. The baby isn't to blame. He deserves the truth." We were quiet for a moment, spoons clicking against cups. I thought of my husband, Robert. He used to say, "Maria, a mother's greatest strength is knowing how to protect a child, even when he isn't your own." I turned back to Clara. "He won't grow up like a trophy in greedy hands. I'm giving him a name, not the counterfeit one they're trying to force on him." I whispered it almost like a prayer. "Gabriel Sarah." Clara tilted her head. "What does it mean?" "Gabriel for his grandfather, the man who built this family with calloused hands. Sarah to honor the mother who paid with her life." The name hung in the air, heavy and holy. Clara nodded, tears slipping down her young cheeks. Gabriel Sarah. Yes, he deserves a name like that. That night, I went back to the room where the baby slept. I stood by the crib and let my fingertip brush his tiny fist. His big, dark eyes opened and fixed on me with a solemnity that felt older than he was, as if he knew I wasn't just a shipwreck who'd lived. I was the last wall he had. I whispered, "From now on, you are Gabriel Sarah. No one will steal your name. No one will turn you into a tool for their greed." He didn't answer, of course, but those small fingers wrapped around mine and gripped hard, and in that moment, I knew I wasn't fighting alone anymore. They dream of stealing $3 billion? Let them dream. The rules just changed. This isn't only about money now. Now it's about blood and the truth. And to tear the masks off the ones hoarding that truth, I'll have to meet a new player, the puppeteer in the shadows, the one people speak of in a name that sounds like the devil's whisper. Some people don't need knives or guns, yet more die by their hands than by any hit squad. I met one of them. They call her Miranda Torres, a celebrated attorney who glides along in glittering heels with a textbook smile, and underneath it all, a graveyard. I learned her name from Clara. One careless afternoon, Vanessa left a folder on the kitchen counter. Clara happened to see Torres stamped at the bottom of a page, signed as legal counsel. She remembered it and told me, lips trembling. "Maria, she's not a normal lawyer. Everything, from the fake birth certificate to the inheritance paperwork, goes through her." I took it to Jack. The old fisherman frowned, then sent me to an old friend of his, Daniel, a retired investigator living in a cedar shack at the tree line. Daniel had blown open plenty of financial scams, but after his wife died, he left the job and only took cases he considered necessary for justice. He met me with a razor-edge stare. No smile, no small talk. "Sit down, Maria. Tell me everything." So I did. The baby, Andrew and Vanessa, the forged documents, Miranda Torres. When I finished, Daniel slid open a drawer and set a thick file on the table. I've heard of her, more than once, but no one survives long enough to tell the story. He laid out black and white photos, elderly people lying motionless, on bathroom tile, at the foot of stairs, beside pill trays. Each caption read the same. "Accident." Daniel looked me dead in the eye. There were no accidents. Every one of them sat on a sizable estate. And funny thing, after they died, the assets flowed straight to family. With legal assistance from one Miranda Torres. An icy shiver ran down my spine. I flipped through the pictures and saw faces twisted in terror, eyes locked open. They died alone, while the woman behind it stayed polished and righteous, preaching the law. Jack's calloused palm cracked against the table. "That's enough, we take her down." But I knew toppling a demon in office couture wouldn't be easy. I stared at the photos, feeling fear and fury braid together. Then I whispered, as if to every face on the page, "I won't let her claim another victim." From that day, we started building a case. Clara quietly photographed every document she could find in the house. Daniel tapped his old network, pulling death records and sudden will changes. Jack became my eyes at the marina, catching comings and goings at Andrew's place. Piece by piece, the picture turned monstrous. In 3 years, Miranda Torres had helped more than 15 families transition estates. The deaths shared the same traits: sudden, plausible, and convenient. No prosecutions. On paper, everything sparkled. Daniel's voice rasped as he walked me through the reports. "Maria, she doesn't work alone. There's a doctor signing off, a judge looking the other way, and a banker quietly opening doors. It's a network, a snare. I leaned back and shut my eyes. Andrew and Vanessa flashed in my mind. Just puppets. The hand on the strings was Torres. I let out a bitter laugh. An old woman like me, filed under assets ready to be harvested. She probably thinks the noose is already tight. I opened my eyes and locked on Daniel and Jack. They think I'm prey, but prey that knows it's being hunted is the most dangerous hunter of all. And while the puppets kept dancing on stage, I prepared the curtain drop. That night, I decided I would let my son and Miranda Torres see a ghost come back from the dead. I chose to sit dead center in the living room. The walls that used to be crowded with family photos now held empty frames and a few expensive pieces of furniture, cold as a showroom. I deliberately took the old leather armchair, the one my husband used to read the paper in. It felt like an abandoned throne, and I'd come back to reclaim it. The door flew open. Andrew walked in, white as a sheet. Vanessa followed, clutching her glittering handbag. And last, Miranda Torres, the puppeteer in the shadows, clicked in on stiletto heels, each tap on the hardwood like a hammer knocking on a coffin lid. I smiled, sweet as a blade tucked in velvet. "Hello, darlings, Mom's here, not dead." Vanessa shrieked like she'd seen a ghost, and Andrew stammered, "Mom, how are you alive?" I folded my arms, lifted a brow. "So the confused old lady fell off a boat script wasn't quite as airtight as you thought. You should have hired a better writer." Miranda didn't flinch. She smiled as if we were at a cocktail party. "Mrs. Harrison, what a surprise. But perhaps a useful one. At least now we can resolve this civilly." I barked a dry laugh. "Civilly? Is that what you call hiring a nurse to tend a stolen baby? Or staging me as an Alzheimer's prop to strip my estate?" Andrew lunged forward. "Mom, we were only trying to protect Dad's legacy." "By tossing me into the ocean," I said, meeting his eyes. Vanessa cut in, voice sharp as glass. "You have no proof of anything you're alleging. You're nothing but a doddering survivor who got lucky." I tilted my head and smiled. "Lucky? Let me show you what preparation looks like." My fingertips brushed the small pin on my lapel. It wasn't a pin, it was a recorder. From the moment they'd walked in, every tremor, every excuse had been captured. Miranda began a little soliloquy, a devil who believed she was untouchable. "Mrs. Maria, the world is harsh. We merely accelerate the process. The elderly are frightened, confused. We offer them an easy exit. Families receive the assets and they slip away quietly. It's a service." "A service?" I said. "Do you bill per head or by property value?" Her mouth twitched. "Call it what you like. The fact is we've succeeded a dozen times over. It's a shame you turned out to be the exception." I leaned back, my voice low enough to cut. "Exceptions topple whole boards." Right then, the floor seemed to tremble. The front door, the back door, even the windows burst open. Dark jackets flooded the room. "FBI, don't move." For the first time, Miranda's polished smile vanished. She froze, eyes wide, as if she couldn't believe she'd just confessed straight into a live mic. I turned as Daniel stepped in, eyes cool as ice. He gave me a short nod. "Daniel," I breathed. A quick, thin smile. "Sorry for the act, Maria. I never retired. I'm deep cover. And thanks to you, we just landed a shark." 2 agents pinned Miranda, snapping cuffs on her wrists. Vanessa clutched her handbag, shaking. Andrew collapsed into himself, like a man waking up from a bad spell. I watched it all, a strange calm rising in me, not because justice had arrived, but because I was no longer prey. We'd hooked a shark, and this time it wasn't getting away. But catching the shark is only the beginning. The hardest part is living with the fallout and deciding whether I can still call Andrew my son after everything he did. Justice doesn't arrive as fast as it does in the movies, but it arrives. I've lived long enough to know that much. After months of investigation and trial, the Untouchables were finally dragged into the light. Miranda Torres, the puppet master in stilettos, got life. She listened to the verdict stone-faced, but her hands trembled when the cuffs closed. An empire built on the bodies of the elderly, dissolved in a few sentences from the bench. Andrew, my son, once my entire world, was sentenced to 25 years. Vanessa got 20. When the judge read the terms, I didn't clap, didn't cheer. I sat still, fingers braided tight, hollow and calm. There was pain, yes, but strangely, there was relief too. The people who tried to bury me at sea will spend the rest of their lives behind cold walls. And me, I'm still here, not just alive, beginning a new chapter. The baby they meant to use as a charm to capture my estate is now my son in every legal sense. Gabriel Sarah. That name echoes through the little house I rent in the suburbs, in every cry and every laugh. The court approved the adoption, and the community rallied around us. Neighbors who attended my fake funeral came back with clothes, formula, toys. They said, "Maria, we believe you'll raise him on the truth. I don't need money to feel rich. I just need to walk into a room and see those serious brown eyes looking up at me, those tiny fingers gripping mine, like he knows I promised never to let go." Every night I tell Gabriel about his grandfather, a decent man who built a family with calloused hands. I tell him about his birth mother, a brave young woman who paid with her life to bring him here. I whisper, "You carry their names so you never forget you were born of love and of loss." Sometimes I wonder if I still consider Andrew my son. Honestly, I don't have an answer. I only know I don't cry for him anymore. I chose to pour my love into a child who hasn't yet learned how cruel adults can be. That choice lets me be a mother, not a victim. I learned something else. Family isn't blood. Family is the people who stay when everyone else turns away. For me, that's Jack, the fisherman who hauled me out of the cold. It's Clara, the young nurse brave enough to testify. It's Daniel, the undercover agent who pretended to be a tired old friend and helped end the devil's game. And now, above all, it's Gabriel Sarah, the child who gave me a new reason to live. I'm no longer the woman trembling on the hospital edge after surgery. I'm Maria, the woman who got pushed into the ocean and came back from the dead, the woman who turned pain into a weapon and betrayal into the drive to protect an innocent life. My story didn't end in cold water. It restarted in a baby's cry and in the belief that from ashes light can still grow. And if anyone out there is still thinking about tossing me overboard, remember this. I may not be a strong swimmer, but I am a world-class avenger. And maybe this is just one of the stories nobody's heard yet. Out there, plenty of families are hiding darker secrets, waiting to be dragged into daylight. The real question is, are you sure the person across your dinner table truly wants you to live a long life? If this story touched your heart, make sure to like, share, and subscribe. Every click helps us bring more powerful stories of empathy, justice, and silent strength to life. Your support is what fuels this journey. Let's keep standing together and rising higher one story at a time. Stay safe and inspired.